This episode is brought to you by Google Pixel, the official fan phone of the NBA and WNBA. The new Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro are built different. How? Take the Audio Magic Eraser tool. It helps block out distracting crowd noise so your play-by-play commentary sounds crystal clear. The only phone engineered by Google brings out the audio you care about so your videos sound as crisp as they look. Learn more at googlestore.com/pixelnba. Audio Magic Eraser requires Google Photos app. May not work on all audio elements.
This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Serie Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Here we go then, another episode of Serie Chronicles, looking back in particular over the weekend of action just gone, round 15 in Serie A, which had the lot, including another Cagliari redemption story. Delighted to say, as ever, I'm joined by Nikki Bandini and Mina Rizuki for this one, and there's so much to get through. Guys, let's begin with a quick message, I would say, just a reminder to all of our listeners to give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. It does help us to be found. And for our Chronicles Tifosi patrons, make sure you join in the Patreon app as well. I'm delighted to say we've not only got both of you ladies, but we've also got a canine friend in the background from the sounds of things.
We have. Ross is already joining in. Sorry, we've got, I have upstairs neighbours where I live and we share a front door. So sometimes when they go to the front door, he has to treat that as if it's his front door and have something to say. But I think he'll settle down.
Well, we like to have plenty of contribution towards the Serie A chat. Clearly, he's got a lot to say about what we've just witnessed. Mina, how are you getting on?
Another flu, another day, but I'm soldiering on. Got to enjoy a lot of the games from bed. Really, honestly, that's how it's going.
Fair enough. And we will start with your beloved Juventus and another win in a big game and against the reigning champions as well, Napoli. There's only one place to start with this. Federico Gatti, I know you've got a bit of a soft spot for him. How much softer has that spot got since he scored the winner against Napoli?
C'è la Juventus in attacco, Cambiaso dal vertice, prova il traversone in mezzo, colpo di testa, rete, ha segnato la Juventus. Ancora Gatti, come nell'ultimo turno di campionato decisivo contro il Monza, il numero 4, ex Frosinone, dall'altezza del secondo palo, ha colpito di testa, incrociato imparabilmente la traiettoria per Merette e la Juventus al minuto 6 nel corso della ripresa passa in vantaggio col meno atteso di tutti, con Federico Gatti.
I think it's weird because it's like the fact that they have to rely on centre backs to score the goals is where I get a little bit worried about all of this. I mean, there has been like a huge thing in Serie A where it's defenders getting goals like Quarta or Di Marco. But I think that with Federico Gatti, you've spent all this money on what is considered, one of the best strikers in the world in Dusan Vlahovic. And up front, you have Federico Chiesa, who's supposed to be the shining light of the Italian national team. And then we have to look back at a guy who came from Serie B and thought, is Gatti good enough to be a centre-back for Juventus? Is he of the caliber of Juventus? And at the moment, he's the guy who's scoring the goals that's keeping them there. So, I mean, one of the things that he said that I love so much is that he was like, well, I was tall, so they put me in defense. And it's kind of like, this was a guy who was a striker, who then was a midfielder and then was put in defense. And he hasn't forgotten how to score the goals, and thank God for that. But I think that, as much as he's been brilliant, as much as he is so obsessed with winning, there's just been countless interviews, whether it's with his father or whether it's him talking about his childhood, what he went through to try to build himself up as a football player. Everyone's talking about the fact that he was a bricklayer and he contemplated moving to Malta or moving to the United States in order to really live out his dream as a footballer, and whatever it took. And I sort of admire the fact that he made it through. It reminds me a little bit of Giaccherini, who would sleep at the back of his car as he would go around trying to find somebody who would give him an opportunity. And obviously he went from Cesena to Juventus as well. Then there's Torricelli. So there's lots of similar stories, let's say. I think the thing that worries me the most is why none of the strikers are getting any goals at Juventus. But a win is a win. And that's all I'm going to try to focus on.
Yeah, it's a very particular sort of moment that's happened for Gatti, and it's a lovely story. And I think this whole sort of bricklayer thing is just such a nice hook for us as journalists, isn't it? When you get bricklayer, it sounds good. You can say, oh, he was a bricklayer. That's one of those jobs that is very easy for people to connect to, and sort of it's such a tangible job. It's not working in an office doing the finances. Is a job that uses your hands, and that everyone can recognize the hard work that goes into that. I was actually reading something that was written by James Horncastle today, who writes The Athletic, and I liked his reference to the fact that this is perhaps a sort of symbolically feels like a return to a more operaio Juventus, a more workman-like Juventus, which is actually something that, even though, Mina, I know you've talked about in recent episodes of the podcast, the fact that in absolute terms, the quality is not there with this side. You compare it to recent Juventus sides and you think, where is the quality? But actually, I do think that spirit of being workmanlike, of always just putting the hard yards in, was very fundamental, even when the best players were there. And that is the sort of thing that, and James was making this point, that gets lost a bit in the Ronaldo era, when suddenly it's the superhero era, and it's not the we're just here to lay bricks and put down foundations and make a successful team. And we're going to go back and forth on this all season, because I don't think Juventus are going anywhere. And I don't think Inter are going anywhere. So we're going to be repeating the conversation about, are they good enough to keep up with Inter all season? And nothing this weekend changes my opinion of that. But I do think that, to take the metaphor to its conclusion, that Gatti represents something of that, the foundations being laid for Juventus that can continue being back to what it's supposed to be, that the team that will always find a way to win games and keep going to the end.
It's interesting because I sort of 2 weeks ago, I wrote this piece for the BBC about Juventus, about whether or not they can win the title. And in it, I said that I didn't say this, but one of the reasons I support Juventus so much is because, and one of the reasons I think I resonated with Ronaldo as a superstar a lot more than I did with Messi, is I'm obsessed with workers, people who sort of live the dream when perhaps they shouldn't, if that makes sense. And Antonio Conte was a great image of that as a midfielder. He wasn't the best. He wasn't technically the best player in the world, but he worked really hard. He wanted to be the very best. And I think that's always how I saw Juventus. And I remember seeing Gaetano Scirea saying that he had come home from celebrating. This was in an interview that he did, which I read many years later, obviously, that he'd come home from celebrating a trophy and saw all the workers lining up to go and catch the bus to go to the factories and work. And he felt really ashamed. And I just always had that image of Juventus as being, despite the fact that they were owned by this really glamorous family and the Agnellis and their ties to JFK and all, like high society, their team was based around workers, working, hard for the team. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't this side that was Milan. Milan under Berlusconi were the team that would get 5 and 6 goals, that would dazzle you with their Brazilian flair or their Dutch know-how or all of these fascinating things. But Juventus was just this team that plugged away. And Di Livio had the 1-0 written on his hand in the 1998 Champions League final. He had 1-0 written in pen marker on his hand and walked out to the final and showed it to the Real Madrid players, because that was Juventus. They would win 1-0. It was never 5-0. It was never a show of brilliance. It was 1-0. And I love that about them. I mean, they lost by that scoreline, so it was almost karma, which was a little bit funny as well.
One way or the other. We can lose 1-0 or win 1-0.
It was offside.
Exactly. Even if we lose, it will be by 1-0. But it just, I don't know, it just made me like this team a lot more, because it sort of just seemed a bit like, if you just work hard and just pedal through, even if we have Del Piero and all the greatest players in the world, we will win 1-0, and that's where we are, and that's what we'll be. And what I love about that is Allegri, he follows that on. And I think that that's what people sometimes forget. Oh, it's so boring. Why aren't we playing this fantastic Guardiola football? And I'm like, that's always been the history of Juve. Maybe it's never been this dull, and I agree with that. But as long as it's a goal.
Head to SerieAchronicles.com/Patreon now and subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi Patreon membership with a free 7-day trial. Get early access to every full-length episode and voice note before the rest of the world. Plus, all episodes are 100% ad-free. And you get bonus Patreon-only exclusive episodes, video episodes, and behind-the-scenes extras. Also, be sure to join the new chat community in the Patreon app and chat with fellow subscribers.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of Vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
How much do aesthetics play into football in the modern game? Have we seen a change in fans' expectations? The whole Juventus ethos, the motto has always been winning is the only thing that matters. And there's no guarantee they will win this season. And we'll get on to Inter in a moment, because they clearly are up against a very talented side at the top. But if they were to win, would that quell all the discontent and all the murmurings against Allegri? And how much of that is amplified by social media these days, when it's so easy to express your opinion, and you get the sense that actually there's not really this groundswell of opinion against Allegri, that most fans that go to the stadium are just happy to see Juventus winning?
I mean, I suppose I have a love-hate with social media that lately has felt a lot more like hate. And this last week has been its own little story with, for those people who've been following it, Joey Barton saying some incredibly obnoxious things about women involved in covering the sport. And it's one of those things where I feel like without social media, that's just someone saying something provocative and being an idiot. And of course, social media, you will always find someone on social media who will argue anything, whatever it is. And then we have to call it a debate. We have to pretend that this is an actual debate and not something stupid. And I feel like that sometimes with discussions around managers as well. Sometimes it only takes one person saying, oh, so-and-so out, and then suddenly it's a debate. And that there would be no debate if Juventus win the league. There would be zero debate, because they would have won the league, and that's all that matters. And I don't think there's a serious debate right now about Allegri. I think there had been after last season, when it wasn't such a, there wasn't really a title challenge, but then no one really made a title challenge to Napoli last season. I think as long as it's a title challenge, that's all that matters. And I do think that's interesting to reflect on when you say that, Patrick, because actually the whole Super League project, the whole idea that was put to us was that the modern football fan needs something to fit their shorter attention span, needs to just have football be broken down into this bite-sized clippable. And to some extent, yes, the online discourse does want that, because it wants to know who's the best of the best, and you can't do that without the Super League format of putting all the best teams together. But also, in the end, I think social media has changed nothing about the fact that all fans really want is to crow about my team won and yours didn't.
Out of curiosity, isn't it just, I know it's not fun to watch, right? I mean, aesthetics seems to play such a big part, Patrick, because I honestly don't know if De Zerbi would have the career that he has. Oh, that was harsh.
That's so harsh. My God, you're De Zerbi bee in your bonnet.
Oh, Nikki, yeah. I always exaggerate it because I enjoy your reaction more than I actually care about it.
I'm just gonna bring on some people from Brighton next time. I'm just gonna bring them on to talk back to you.
No, he does play fantastic football. But to be honest with you, that's what it is. It's fantastic football is more important sometimes than getting the wins, you know? And I understand that, especially if I think that matters potentially right now for like Roma fans as well, who have been used to having some of the very best coaches and playing the best style of football under Zeman, under Spalletti, and having to see a very different style now under Mourinho. And yet the stadium is packed. Everyone's there because they're winning, right? So I think that aesthetics now matters almost too much. Social media certainly amplifies it. But isn't it more fun? I mean, I would have this debate endlessly on BBC because Guillaume Balaguer is obsessed with good football and good performances. And that's why he's always been obsessed with Barcelona. I partial to Real Madrid under Ancelotti because I love a team that performs as badly as they did in the Champions League and then win it that year that they won it, you know, the one where it's like, we don't need to be fantastic, you know, we just need 5 minutes and we can overcome any result. I love, when I think of Juventus, when I think of what made me really happy was, you know, there was a run to the Champions League final twice, but the game that always stays in my head are the 2 games played against Tottenham Hotspur, where they were just abysmal to watch for 60 minutes of it, you know? And then all of a sudden, the last 10 minutes, they bring on a couple of players and it's, you know, Higuain and Dybala just find the goals, they win the match, and then Chiellini does this whole interview afterwards. We're like, this is Tottenham. And
it's the history of Tottenham. It's the history of Tottenham.
But it's also the history of Juventus. We don't need to perform brilliantly. We just need to find the goals that win the match. And it gives me this weird rush. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe because I'm somebody who leaves my deadlines until the last hour and then I just thrash out an article, you know, and it's
all the trade secrets are coming out now.
Yeah, it's a bit like, isn't that also fun? Isn't it also fun to watch Madrid like not necessarily play Manchester City football but win, and watch Manchester City just play and play for 7 years in a row, get trashed by, I don't know, Monaco and Liverpool and Tottenham and not win when it's aesthetically pleasing? What would you prefer? And I think that that's where it's a great debate, because there are some people who will prefer it and should probably, maybe, I don't know. And then there's the people like me who would rather win it all and just laugh.
I think it all comes down essentially to, sorry, Nikki, I think it comes down to how subjective, it's a very subjective question, isn't it? I think ultimately, if you pursue victory via an aesthetic brand of play and then you're able to achieve both, which Napoli had last season, albeit it was the first time in 33 years, and we can segue now onto the champions, I think, with that, then that is fine. But I think it's very hard to marry the two. And I think Juventus have just been the kings of pragmatism throughout their history. It's a case of, yes, we are the workers' team. Yes, we are representing these factory assembly lines, the Fiat factory, and we are just going to become very mechanical. We're going to become a winning machine. And I think that Allegri understands that. He buys into that culture. And I think he actually relishes not only winning ugly, but also winning ugly against a team that, quite honestly, their fan base is quite self-righteous. And with the greatest of respect to Napoli fans, they can be insufferable when they just bang on about, but we win the right way, or they're not playing nice football, etc. And I think that if you're a Juventus fan waking up on Saturday morning having seen your team beat Napoli 1-0 on the Friday night, even with Napoli having some clear-cut chances, then surely it is just doubly satisfying. Are we seeing the limitations of Napoli there, that the fact that they don't have a plan B? And to be very provocative, Nikki, were they right to sack Rudi Garcia? Are they any better off with Walter Mazzarri than they were with Garcia?
I find that question really sort of difficult to answer, because it's just the games he's had to walk into since taking charge are such an unreasonably difficult set of games, right? You go from Real Madrid away to playing Inter to playing Juventus. And I talk about this all the time, that when we talk about football games as journalists, we all retrofit our narratives around the final scoreline. And this game could have ended differently. It just could have. If Kvaratskhelia keeps his shot down when Osimhen puts him wide through on goal at 0-0, then it's not going to finish 1-0 to Juventus. Maybe Juventus still win, but it's not going to finish 1-0. If Szczesny doesn't pull out that one brilliant save he made from, it was Di Lorenzo, wasn't it?
It was.
Then it's not going to finish 1-0. And so
if Vlahovic scores his opportunity.
Right. All these...
Poor old Vlahovic.
Yeah. But all these stories in football get determined by goals, and goals are such a rare commodity that sometimes it can still feel sort of ridiculous how much analysis we put onto it. And I think if I was looking at this game in isolation, I would think overanalyzing it is ridiculous from Napoli's point of view because it's one game. I think that I've seen enough of the team now to think I'm not convinced that Mazzarri is going to be this instant salve to the post-Rudi Garcia era that perhaps people hoped he would be. I think that despite having way more of the ball, like 2/3 of the ball, they were oddly passive at times in this game. And it felt like that's the thing that, well, was that true under Garcia? Under Garcia, it was different. Under Garcia, they felt one note to me. They were just constantly looking for those long balls over the top, which didn't feel very Napoli. And I think they're more varied now. But I don't know if they've got that. I don't know if it's aggression or if it's just self-confidence at this point that they had under Spalletti, where we talk all the time about how the team would flow and occupy the pitch. But it's also just that aggression of going for that ball in the last yard, which I think is sometimes a matter of backing yourself. And I think this team is not backing itself at the moment, which perhaps is also why it doesn't take its chances.
Can I say, is this not just... It's a very hot take, and I'm interested to know in your opinions. But Napoli have always been a brilliant side. They were brilliant under Maurizio Sarri, and they were even brilliant under Walter Mazzarri in that first, when they had Cavani and Lavezzi. And then you had obviously Sarri. I think they were brilliant in a lot of the games in which they had Benitez, and I think that they were obviously magnificent under Spalletti. Now, we spoke about this, and it seemed like we didn't want to talk about it too much because it seemed like we were taking away from their glorious win last season. But there wasn't that much of a competition being put up by the likes of Inter, for example, who had a horrible start to the season, and Juventus especially as well. And then there was a lot of talk of, did they really have anyone challenging them at the time? And then it started to fall apart towards the end of the season. They lost to Milan in the Champions League, and then they started to suffer towards the end. They had injuries. Obviously, Osimhen wasn't there. Kvara stopped scoring after April. It seems like they had this great mentality, this desire to go, blitz out, win everything, which they succeeded at the start of the season. But somewhere along the line, it was like the real Napoli insecurity started to come up, and we stopped sort of seeing that fight from them that we saw before. I would honestly say, even if they had Spalletti this season, they would probably still find it hard against this particular Inter side, for example, against this Juventus side. They would still, I would always say, to be the best, most beautiful football team that we can watch, because I do genuinely believe Spalletti is a magician on the pitch, but I mean, as a coach. But would they probably not also still suffer, considering that people would start figuring out what to do? They would. I'm just saying that I don't think it's all going to be glorious had they managed to keep Spalletti either.
The holidays are a time to feel and create joy. And what could be more joyous than the look on her face as she unwraps a stunning new jewelry piece from Blue Nile? How about getting 50% off your purchase? Blue Nile offers premium quality, priced below traditional retail. Their online experts are available 24/7 to answer any questions and make sure you've picked the perfect gift. For a limited time, you can get 50% off at BlueNile.com. That's 50% off at BlueNile.com.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit Amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's Amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.
I mean, I think there's another sort of, boring but important point to make, which is last season's Napoli team, as spellbinding as they were going forward, they've conceded 28 goals the whole season. They've already conceded 18 this season. It's less than halfway there, and they're getting towards, you can imagine by halfway of the season being over 20 already. There's very sort of prosaic reasons as well for why things are worse. And one of them is you've sold one of the best centre-backs, I think, in Europe, was the level he was playing at last season with Kim. So there's elements that are missing that aren't to do with the managers as well.
Di Federico Gatti, si continua a giocare, pallone intercettato Di Lorenzo, ma è finita! La Juventus ha battuto il Napoli per 1-0 nell'anticipo della 15ª giornata del campionato di calcio di Serie A ed è di nuovo in testa alla classifica.
Just before we move on to Inter, I think you make a very good point there, Mina, the fact that whatever happened, Napoli were going to have that danger of the pancia piena. You know, they'd feasted and they were satisfied, and then it's very hard to find that motivation, which again speaks to, and I don't want this to become a Juventus loving, although I'm sure you would adore that possible. But that was what was so great about those Juventus sides of the 9 in a row, the likes of Chiellini, who, you know, every year they would reset, every year they would forget what had gone before, and they would go out and prove that they're the best team domestically. So I think Napoli have a long way to go. It was that perfect storm of a long wait for a league title, the best coach last season. They had the most prolific striker. And as you said, Nikki, there are very few defenders in world football that allow you to play such a high aggressive line as Kim does. But because of his unique skill set, Napoli were able to do that. And it just meant that even when they lost possession, they were able to win it back in the opposition half. Short route to goal. I mean, I'm making this sound much simpler than it actually is. I don't want to be reductive, but he was a perfect fit for that team in that style of play. And once you lose him, you lose the head coach and you lose the sporting director as well. You know, lest we forget, Cristiano Giuntoli is now at Juventus, and I'm interested to see if and when he will act in January. But we have to talk about Inter.
I just want to check. Are we saying this is the history of Napoli? Is this what we're saying?
It kind of is, right?
I think history tells us that they had never before defended a league title. They'd only ever won a league title with arguably the greatest player of all time. Last season, they put together the best squad. They had the most valuable player. They had the capocannoniere. They had defender of the year. They had coach of the year. It was a flawless season, and it was always going to be hard for them to match that. And I think Spalletti was conscious of that and thought, you know what, I'm going to go away with my legacy untarnished. I'm going to take my honorary citizenship of Naples, and I'm going to happen to have the Italy top job fall in my lap. But we can talk about the national team, I think, in March at this stage, because lest we forget, we're in December, and Inter are the team on everyone's lips. And I am slightly torn about this. And I don't know about you two, but my sense is, for all the plaudits they're into getting, and they are warranted, and for all the fabulous football they're playing in terms of scoring goals, 4-0 winners over Udinese, they've got the best defence in the league as well, they're still only 2 points ahead of Juventus. Is this a gap that is destined to grow, or do Inter start to feel frustrated that despite playing some of the best football we've seen from them in many years, they've still got Juventus and what their fans would concede is a poor Juventus side, not a vintage team, breathing down their necks?
I mean, this is the thing with beating Napoli 3-0 or beating them 1-0. In the end, you still just get 3 points. It doesn't change anything, and that's what Juventus' great sort of strength in this situation is, that they don't need to play brilliantly. They don't need to play as well as Inter in a league season. You just need to keep winning. I think that the point you made before is the salient one for me, Patrick. They keep responding. They keep having to do this after Juventus have already won, and they do keep responding, which is a sign of a very mature and confident side. The fact that they sort of did go and win 4-0. Udinese have given up a few goals this season. They're not necessarily a team that you measure yourself by, but still, it's a confident way to respond. Inter are going to have to do it again next week. They're going to have to keep doing it all season, as long as they're in Europe, and they're going to, I expect, well, they're certainly going to be in Europe into the new year, and I expect they're going to be in for a way towards the end of the season, personally. I don't know, I think that that pressure that Juventus are putting on right now is very real. I think it will feel more real in February if Juventus is still applying it, because in February, then Inter are going to have some games they really have to worry about outside of the league, and perhaps sooner with the Super Cup, I suppose. And that's the point at which you're going to see more difficult questions answered of them. But look, they brought in Bisek for this game, gave him his first start, and he was great. So there's no reason to question what they're doing. They're winning every game and they're playing well.
Yeah, I think that if I'm an Inter fan, that I would be rather thrilled with the fact that I am ahead of Juventus, who have a whole week to prepare. That I'm also probably, I mean, if I win tonight. I qualify in first position in the Champions League, which is, I mean, Juventus are really giving everything that they can to be only 2 points behind Juventus. They're getting centre backs. All they need is Providel to score, and then to join the team and score, and then they'd be fine. But if I'm Inter right now, I feel like I have a genuine chance at reaching another Champions League final. And not, in all honesty, I would probably put all my energy on that. But what's interesting is that they're putting all their energy in Serie A and they're rotating in the Champions League. And that's where I find it amazing. So for that, I have to say it's really impressive. I have to say it's really impressive that they can and have the squad depth. I think also the growth of players like Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who I've always viewed as somebody who's, especially when he left Milan and Inter went for him, I understood the reasons behind it, and they spoke about this recently with the fact that Inzaghi said, I immediately thought of Çalhanoğlu because there were rumors about him leaving Milan. And I spoke to Marotta and he agreed. He had already spoken to him. But I never thought that they would never feel the absence of Brozovic like they haven't felt this season. And I think like Brozovic for me is one of the finest midfielders in the world. And to not even slightly feel his absence is remarkable. So yes, it's their ability to the high press. It's Lautaro Martinez. That I'm interested to see that though, because I think Lautaro Martinez has always been a streaky player. I want to see whether or not he can maintain this whole season and play like the way that he's been playing, because I do feel like potentially he's made that step up now. He's showing us that ability to be consistent, to act like a captain and a leader. And I sort of I hope that I see him like that for the rest of the season. And I'm interested to see what happens going forward as to whether or not that starts to change.
Do you know what's in my head right now? Just to pick up again on Patrick's question, to come back to it. I think last season, as we've all just said, was a season unto itself. Napoli got out so fast out of the blocks and they never let up and they became uncatchable. And it was this particular season as well with the World Cup in the middle of it that perhaps amplified some sense of that. But you go back to the season before and Milan won the league, but I'm not certain they were better than Inter. They just had the ability to hold their nerve when they needed to. And I come back to that game in April, the one against Bologna, which everyone had been looking at forever and saying, well, Inter are going to win their game in hand against Bologna and then they'll go back on top. And they didn't. They went 1-0 up against Bologna with Perisic and they blew it. That's what Juventus are holding on for. Juventus are holding on for just keep on the heels, keep on the heels, keep on the heels. And when that moment comes in April, be ready to pounce on them, because in general, no team can get through a season without slipping up somewhere. And that's all it comes down to.
Do you see this Inter doing that? Well? Do you see Inter retreating to try to type, to have those, I don't know, because this Inter just seems to be like on a whole nother level to anything I'd seen before.
Well, it's because they've got the demon of Piacenza in charge now, Mina.
Simone Inzaghi, for those not familiar with his new moniker, which apparently was doing the rounds on Twitter and was then put to him by Sky Italia journalist Marco Barzaghi. Oh no, it was Matteo, wasn't it? It was his brother. Anyway, for Sky. But I have to rail against the suggestion that Milan weren't necessarily the best team when they won the league. I think that's a common misconception. I think it does a disservice to a team that got 86 points that season, a team that, I mean, I did almost every game in their run-in, so the numbers just stick in my head. They conceded 2 goals in their last 11 games. They had 9 clean sheets in that time. They won each of their last 6 games. They went 16 unbeaten to close out the season as well. All that, and the last loss they had actually was in January. It was that crazy game with Matteo Serra, the referee who gave that rather odd decision for Spezia. So that was a big bone of contention. But I think you're right. The one thing that could cost Inter is this mental fragility that we've seen in the past. Simone Inzaghi's never been there and done it and got over the line with a title challenge. 2 failures from 2 as Inter boss. They had that season with Lazio 2019-20 until the pandemic struck, when Lazio were playing 1 game a week and they looked like they were going to win the league, and then suddenly we saw that they couldn't handle it. So I think if Juventus are able to do what Juventus did very well for 9 years in a row, which is beat all the teams they're supposed to beat and then don't lose the 6-pointers, they don't necessarily even need to beat Inter at San Siro. If they're within striking distance, Inter's fixture list becomes congested because of a European run, and then you never know. And fate, like that game at Bologna, which was pushed back because of That was a bizarre situation, the Dall'Ada. It was Inter that travelled to that game that day, and the Bologna players were urged to stay at home by the local health authority for Emilia-Romagna. So the game was actually played 100 days later. Anyway, I'm conscious of the time, so I think we should...
I want to ask one question quickly to both of you about Inter, because it's been on my mind the last bit. They've got 10 clean sheets this season, and I'm trying to answer myself, am I buying Jan Sommer as an elite goalkeeper all of a sudden? Am I suddenly thinking that he's part of this, or is it just that the defence is that good? And I'm curious for your thoughts on Jan Sommer, because that one's really been in my head this week.
I'm a fan. I have to say I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of his hairline as well. Slightly envious of his hairline. But I think he provides a lot of stability. I think he seems to be vocal despite not necessarily being an Italian speaker. And he just seems to exude confidence, which is what you want. And I think Onana was, well, in theory, in terms of what he achieved with Inter, Onana was a hard act to follow. It depends whether you judge him on what he's shown this season or what he showed last season. But I just think that you need someone back there, and a slightly sloppy performance against Sassuolo notwithstanding, he seems to be making the saves that are required of him. That save from Elmas in the Napoli game, there was a save from Osimhen as well in the same game. So I think it's another smart bit of recruitment from Inter. It's obviously not a long-term choice, because I think he's 34 if memory serves. So, yeah.
I think it depends on the kind of team that you are. Just a quick one. I mean, if you have a solid defense, then your goalkeeper, you just need a good goalkeeper. You don't need the very best. If you're a team that sometimes takes a lot of risks, like an Atalanta, then yes, I think the topic of the goalkeeper always comes up, because it is a team like or a Fiorentina that do take a lot of risks and leave themselves exposed at the back, which is why when there was that endless debate of Buffon and Casillas, Buffon always had one of the world's greatest defenses ahead of him, whereas Casillas had a Real Madrid side where defenders were out there trying to score goals as well. So I always felt a little bit sorrier for Casillas, but I do feel that Inter make their goalkeepers very good with this current back line, and their style of play helps a lot with that. So I do think that he's benefiting from that in the way that Onana did too. And I guess, maybe taking him out of that equation, would Sommer still be the superhero that he looks like now? I honestly don't know.
It was the weekend of 6-pointers. We didn't only have Juventus against Napoli. Before we move on to Roma-Fiorentina, which I know, Nikki, you had some thoughts on, and very much enjoyed your voice note on that game as well. But we have to talk about Milan losing in Bergamo 4 years on, essentially to the day from when they lost 5-0 to Atalanta. There were 5 goals this time, albeit it needed a dramatic late winner, and what a winner, from neutral's favourite, Luis Muriel. Is there a player that is more adored by neutral fans than Luis Muriel in Serie A? I was trying to think of one. Or maybe you're not a fan. I sense your hesitation.
I felt like I've spoken a lot. I was going to see if Mina wanted to come straight in, but no, I don't know if I'd want him starting for my team, because I'm not sure I ever feel totally confident what you're going to get from Luis Muriel. But I absolutely, I think I literally burst out laughing when he scored that goal. My reaction to it was just, he's just got the audacity. He's just got the audacity, and it's wonderful to watch players who have that about them, who have the absolute boldness to try something like that.
It's like having that one friend of yours who, like, it's before exams and they don't study and they just show up and they get straight A's. I kind of feel like that's what Muriel did, Yes, I wouldn't want him for my team. I think he's fun to watch because, and the fact is that he was booed coming on, because it's like taking off Lookman for Muriel, who you never know what you're going to see. Gasperini insists that he sees all of this in training, and he always tells him, well, why don't you show it to us in the game? And I never know, because he's got it within his. I'm just not into. I'll be honest with you. I'm somebody who prefers effort over brilliance. So he's never going to be a player that I'm going to lean to in that sense.
See, I think I have a different analogy for him, Mina. I think he's that friend who, when you're younger and you're going out, they'll say they're coming. You never know if they're going to show up or not. But if they show up, it's going to be the best night of your life. There's that friend who is going to take the party to another level. Like, when they show up, you're going to have a great time, but you just don't know if he's going to be there.
Giampiero Gasperini gets the better of Stefano Pioli. They led 3 times, but in the end, Calabria's late dismissal proved costly. Milan's mini revival comes to an end after back-to-back wins. Atalanta get maximum points for the first time since October.
Muriel the Maverick, there you go. Football's very own peacock. We have to talk about Stefano Pioli and the implications that goal has on his future. Just when Milan looked like they'd got a good point from Bergamo, Muriel comes on. And if any of our listeners haven't watched that goal, go and watch it back on loop. I mean, it's been everywhere and you can watch it from every possible camera angle. But he rolls his studs over the ball to control it as it comes in behind him before then backheeling it past Mike Maignan into the corner. Where do Milan go from here? Is it a case of hobble on with Pioli until the end of the season? Do they need to make a change? Do they consider making a change immediately? Do they wait for the Champions League denouement, which looks like it's going to end in elimination? Mina, where do you stand on Pioli in, Pioli out?
I think that I definitely don't want Pioli out. I honestly cannot think of who they can bring in that would be able to help this team at this moment. Not because there isn't a great coach out there. Well, there isn't a great coach out there. And I think that the problem is that a lot is being expected of Pioli, and I'm not entirely sure why. I find it.
Become a member at patreon.com/Serie A Chronicles for regular bonus episodes and content.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Baker's, fresh for everyone.